The most dangerous manipulators don't trick you with lies. They use your own words as weapons. Every compliment you give builds their arsenal. Here's what they hear when you speak. Why? Your need to be liked is your biggest vulnerability. Let me tell you something nobody wants to admit. That desperate need to be seen as a good person, exactly what makes you easy to control. Not because you're weak, because you're predictable. And manipulators have made a science out of studying what good people do when they want to maintain their reputation. Here's how it works. You pride yourself on being helpful. Maybe you've even said it out loud. I'm always there for my friends, or never turn people down when they need me. Congratulations. You just handed over the blueprint for how to exploit you. Because now, every request comes wrapped in your own words. You said you're always there for people becomes the justification for ridiculous demands at ridiculous hours. The psychological mechanism is fascinating. Research from Harvard's Department of Psychology found that people who publicly commit to identity-based statements are 3 times more likely to act consistently with those statements, even when it causes personal harm. You didn't just say you're helpful. You created an obligation to prove it over and over again. But here's where it gets darker. Manipulators don't wait for you to volunteer your values. They extract them through strategic compliments. When someone tells you, "You're so understanding," they're not just being nice. They're installing software. That compliment programs you to continue being understanding, even when the situation demands you get angry, even when you should walk away. Think about the last time someone praised a quality in you right before asking for something. "You're so patient. That's why I need your help with this complicated situation." Translation: suppress your frustration and give me what I want. "You're the most reliable person I know. Can you cover for me again?" Translation: sacrifice your time because I've attached your identity to it. The trap closes when you start chasing that validation high. Compliments trigger dopamine release. You feel seen, appreciated, special. So you bend a little more, stretch a little further, cross boundaries you swore you wouldn't cross. All because someone figured out that calling you the person who always comes through would make you incapable of saying no. And here's the question you need to ask yourself. How many times have you compromised what you actually wanted just to live up to someone else's description of who you are? How your stories about yourself become scripts for your manipulation. Every story you tell about yourself is intelligence gathering for people who know how to listen. That time you stayed late to finish a project. That moment you mediated a family conflict. That experience overcoming a difficult challenge. You think you're just making conversation. They're taking notes on how to position themselves in your life. The hero complex exploitation is elegant because it weaponizes your competence. When you frame yourself as someone who solves problems, you're essentially announcing that you're available to solve theirs too. Not just available, obligated. Because heroes don't get to pick and choose. Heroes show up. Heroes sacrifice. Heroes carry weight that isn't theirs to carry. Watch how this plays out in real time. You mentioned once that you helped a friend move apartments. 3 months later, someone you barely know asks you to help them move. And when you hesitate, they say, "But you're so good at this kind of thing." You shared a single anecdote. They turned it into your job description. The narrative hijacking gets even more insidious when they start retelling your stories with subtle edits. That time you worked through burnout becomes evidence that you should be able to handle more stress. Now, that vulnerable moment you shared about struggling with anxiety becomes justification for why you should understand. When they flake on commitments, your experiences are copy-pasted and remixed until they serve someone else's agenda. And then there's the projection trap. When you talk about future plans, dreams, aspirations, manipulators hear opportunities for insertion. You mention wanting to start a business. Suddenly, they have a perfect partnership opportunity that requires your expertise and your investment. You talk about planning a vacation. They're already inviting themselves and expecting you to handle logistics. Your goals become collaborative projects you never agreed to. The most damaging part isn't that they distort your stories. It's that they do it so gradually, you don't notice until you're living a narrative you don't recognize. You look around one day and realize the person everyone thinks you are the one who always helps, always understands, always accommodates isn't someone you chose to be. It's a character they wrote using your own words as source material. Have you ever caught someone retelling a story about you that didn't quite match what actually happened? What your casual vulnerability reveals about your pressure point's authenticity has become currency in modern relationships. Everyone preaches vulnerability, emotional honesty, showing up as your real self. And that's beautiful when it's reciprocated with genuine connection. But when you're dealing with manipulators, every honest admission is a loaded gun you're handing over with instructions on how to aim it. The empathy extraction follows a clear pattern. You demonstrate compassion for someone's situation. You share a similar experience to show understanding. You offer emotional support. Manipulators catalog all of it: what triggers your sympathy, which narratives make you drop your guard, what kind of suffering you can't ignore. Then they reverse engineer those exact scenarios when they need something from you. You mentioned dealing with depression in college? Get ready for strategically timed mental health crises that require your immediate intervention. You talked about valuing loyalty because you've been betrayed before? Expect speeches about how everyone else abandoned them and you're their only hope. Your empathy isn't a feeling anymore. It's a button they press when they want access to your time, money, or energy. The confession hook is particularly vicious because it masquerades as intimacy building. When you reveal insecurities, it feels like you're creating trust. Maybe you are, but you're also providing ammunition. That offhand comment about feeling inadequate at work transforms into, maybe taking on this extra project would help you prove yourself. That admission about fearing abandonment becomes leverage to keep you from enforcing boundaries. Here's the test they run constantly. Small requests disguised as innocent questions. How would you handle this? Isn't curiosity, it's reconnaissance. Could you help me with something quick? Isn't a question, it's a probe. They start with minor boundary violations to map your resistance levels before escalating to major demands. And once you've shared too much, the damage is permanent. You've already shown where it hurts, already demonstrated what you'll do to avoid certain feelings, already revealed which threats make you comply. There's no taking it back. Drop a word. What vulnerability of yours do you think someone has used against you? If this perspective shift hit different, hit that like button and subscribe for more reality checks on manipulation tactics. What happens when your passive language signals open season? The most dangerous manipulations don't happen through aggressive demands. They happen through the careful observation of how you respond to tiny infractions. Every time you use passive language, every time you avoid directness, every time you smooth over discomfort, you're broadcasting exactly how far someone can push before you finally push back. The opinion mining operation runs constantly in casual conversation. Someone asks what you think about people who borrow money and don't pay it back. Your answer determines whether they'll hit you up for a loan. They ask if you believe people deserve second chances. Your response reveals whether you'll tolerate repeated violations or if you have hard limits. These aren't philosophical discussions. They're data collection. And here's the genius of the mirroring technique. Once you reveal your values, manipulators reflect them back perfectly. You say you appreciate directness, they become the most straight-shooting person you've ever met. You mention hating fake people, suddenly, they're all about authenticity. You're not building genuine connection. You're watching a performance designed to match your stated preferences. The "just kidding" gambit is pure boundary testing. Subtle insults wrapped in humor. Disrespectful comments followed by, "Can't you take a joke?" When you react, they dismiss you as too sensitive. When you don't react, they note it. This one absorbs disrespect without consequences. These aren't jokes. They're calibration exercises, determining how much abuse you'll accept before you break. Submissive concessions are the green light manipulators dream about. Phrases like, "whatever you want," "I don't really care," or, "if you think so," don't register as flexibility in their minds. They register as absence of boundaries. And where there are no boundaries, there's unlimited access to your time, energy, and resources. Think about this carefully. How many times have you said, "I don't mind," when you absolutely did mind, just to avoid conflict? How many times has someone's joke crossed a line, but you laughed anyway. How many times have your own words been used to trap you in contradictions you never actually created? Your passive language isn't politeness, it's permission. And manipulators are fluent in reading permissions you never intended to grant. Do you find yourself constantly saying, "It's fine," when nothing is actually fine? How to weaponize silence and take back your narrative. The beautiful thing about understanding how manipulation works is realizing you don't need to become someone else to protect yourself. You don't need aggressive confrontations or dramatic speeches. You need strategic adjustments, precise language, and the willingness to let uncomfortable silence do the heavy lifting. Start with intentional silence as your most powerful tool. When someone makes an unreasonable request, you don't owe an immediate response. Let the pause exist. Let them sit in it. Manipulators rely on your reflex to fill awkward gaps, to smooth over tension, to rush into explanations. When you simply stop talking, they have to work harder. They have to reveal more of their strategy. They have to show their hand. And that's when their manipulation becomes visible. Next, reconstruct how you think about reciprocity. Helping someone doesn't create a permanent debt they can collect on forever. The critical phrase is, "I was happy to help that time, but I can't make it a pattern." Clear, bounded, non-negotiable. When someone tries to weaponize past favors, your response is simple: "That was a gift, not a contract. You help because you choose to, not because you're obligated to." Then master the first-person assertion. Instead of, "You always do this to me," try, "I don't accept this behavior." Instead of, "You're making me uncomfortable," try, "Ending this conversation now." See the shift? You're not attacking them. You're declaring your boundaries, not as a request for their approval, but as a statement of fact about what you will and won't tolerate. Here's the game changer. Stop justifying every "no, can't" invites negotiation. "I won't" is final. You don't owe detailed explanations about your limits. "That doesn't work for me" is a complete sentence. When they press for reasons, you repeat, "Because it doesn't work for me." Manipulators survive on your justifications. Without them, they have nothing to argue against. And understand this core truth: you don't need people to agree with your boundaries. You need them to respect your boundaries. If someone questions whether your limits are reasonable, the problem isn't your limits. The problem is their lack of respect. Stop trying to convince people your boundaries are valid. They are. End of discussion. Your words built invisible chains. But words can also build fortresses. Every assertive statement is armor. Every strategic silence is a weapon. You have more power than you've been using. Time to reclaim it. Drop a word. What boundary are you setting today? Comment below. If this shifted how you see your own power, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and pass this along to someone who needs to hear it.